My fiancé Ollie and I have been together for 4 years, living together for 2, recently got engaged. Our relationship has been great for the most part. One of the few things we disagree on is animals. I love animals and Ollie feels indifferent towards most animals. To give a little background about me, I've always been an animal lover. Throughout my childhood, my mom hated animals, especially dogs. My mom never let us have any pets, and she used to tell us that once we were adults we could have whatever animals we wanted. When I moved away for college, I lived on campus for 4 years, and therefore couldn't have any pets. I've wanted a dog for as long as I could remember, but up until recently it wasn't in the cards for me to have a dog. Ollie and I currently live in a not-so-pet-friendly city for renters. I always lived in apartments that never allowed pets, even with a pet deposit. When Ollie and I met, I told her about wanting to get a dog someday. Ollie told me that she doesn't like a lot of dogs, but would be open to the right dog. This was in the very beginning of us meeting. I basically made it really clear that I will own a dog one day. Throughout our relationship, I would occasionally bring up wanting a dog. Ollie would remind me that our apartment doesn't allow for pets, which was true. Ollie and I agreed that once we moved into a place that allowed for pets, we would look into getting a dog. About 2 months ago, Ollie and I moved into a house just outside of the city we work in. The house is a good size for the 2 of us, plus extra. The landlord is pet-friendly, and the house has a huge, fenced-in yard. It's a much more residential area, and there's a dog park about 3 blocks from the house. On top of the house being perfect for a dog, I'm in a financial place where I can afford a dog. I make very good money and I don't have to travel for work. I'm mentally prepared for potential pet fees and other expenses for having people watch the dog. Since we're finally settled in the house, I decided to mention to Ollie again about going to the shelter and looking at the adoptable dogs. Only this time, Ollie didn't have an excuse for why we couldn't get one. After a few weak excuses, sometimes we go away, Ollie broke down and told me that she doesn't want a dog. In fact, she's never wanted a dog. She was hoping I would forget about my dreams of wanting a dog. I'm not sure what to do. I'm trying to reason with Ollie, but she said her answer will always be no to a dog. She just doesn't like them and doesn't want them. She basically gave me an ultimatum, either her or my potential dog. I'm feeling shitty about this, because I always made it clear to her that I was going to want a dog someday. I feel like she was banking on something unrealistic, and now she's putting me in a lousy spot. I bought a house a few months ago and moved in last month. The previous owner was a friendly old man that could no longer live alone, so he decided to sell and move in with his daughter. Just to be clear now, apparently he had been allowing use of his driveway to his disabled neighbor lady, largely because street parking is extremely limited and what little street parking there is pretty much instantly occupied. What I am saying is, unless you have a driveway, you end up having to park a good 5-minute walk away, and that's the best case scenario. I put disabled in quotation marks because the lady in question is just really overweight, and I am not sure if that counts as disabled. Obviously I was unaware of this, so I was surprised to see a large SUV parked in my driveway when I moved in. I ended up having to knock on several doors asking whose car it was because the movers could not stand still on the busy road too long. I figured out it was the neighbor's car, so after a good 10 minutes of knocking, an extremely angry enormous lady opened the door. I told her to move the car and she immediately started arguing that the neighbor said it was fine. I told her he moved out. I moved in and no, it is not fine, and to move it because the movers need to unload my stuff. She begrudgingly did. I ended up seeing her walking back half an hour later completely wet with sweat. Now a few days later I went back to work and lo and behold, the SUV is parked in my driveway again. I go over there again, spend 20 minutes knocking on the door before this lady opens the door, again, visibly angry. I tell her to move her car. My driveway is not public parking. She protests, saying her ankles can't take walking the distance and claims I can easily walk. I tell her that while that might be true, it's my goddamn driveway and I want to park there myself. Again she moves her car. Again I spot her half an hour later drenched in sweat making her way home. Well, it happened again a week ago, and this time she would not open her door. I got tired of it and had her SUV towed. She of course came to my house to scream at me. I told her to get the hell off my property. A few days later I had a small fence installed with a lock on it to make sure it did not happen again. I have since been getting dirty looks from her and one other neighbor, and when I told my mom, she told me I should be nicer to people. I do feel sort of bad too. She clearly struggles with the walk after all. I'm a software engineer with a full-time job and a side hustle of doing freelance coding work in my own time. I've always been the type to have a side hustle I put a lot of my free time into. I get really bored sitting idle. My freelance hourly rates are $60 an hour, and at my full-time job, my hourly pay works out to about $40 an hour. So that's how I value my time. Anyway, over Christmas vacation, I was staying at my parents' house. My cousin was also staying over with her 3 young kids from Christmas to New Year's. I'd been planning on doing some work on my freelance projects when I had free time, in the mornings when my family had no plans. I wasn't in any rush. I was already ahead of schedule on them all, but I didn't really have anything else to do. It was in a really rural area, and it's like an hour drive to the nearest anything. Then my cousin and her husband asked if I could babysit all day for 3 days, so they could visit some friends in the area and hang out with just adults. I said I had planned on doing freelance work at the library, and she offered to pay me to babysit. I said I could if they got close to my freelance rates. She wanted a number, and although my freelance rates are $60, I didn't feel like that was right. It was high. But I didn't want to go too low. Honestly, babysitting 3 kids would be harder for me than the routine coding work I had for my freelance project. I don't know a lot about kids, and I've never babysat for long, and I had a feeling it would be stressful and difficult. So I said $35, which is below what I make hourly at work, and what is the bare minimum I'd value my time for, if that time is spent doing difficult work. And she went crazy at me, saying that's a ridiculous rate for babysitting, that I was entitled and being selfish, that I'm trying to take advantage of how she didn't have other options, etc. I said that's way below what I'd be making if I had the time to do my own work, and I'd be putting off my own work to babysit. Her husband then got mad at me, saying that I was a 24-year-old girl, that I'm damn near a child myself, that my time is not worth that much and it's childish to say that it was, and that I was a stupid girl for not knowing that babysitting costs like $15 an hour. When I grew up and have kids of my own, I will see how stupid I was being. I was kind of done with being called stupid, so I just told them I hope they could find someone else. My mom thinks that I asked for something offensive, and my cousin and her husband obviously did too. I'm not gonna be shy about this. My sister sucks. She is a horrible self-centered person who thinks she is the main character. She is not only a horrible person, she is a step monster. She married this guy, who is a freaking pushover, 3 years ago. He has 2 children, 10 and 6. My sister constantly complains about them, saying things like the 6-year-old is gross because he sips too loud or has stained clothing. For the love of God, he is 6. That's what a child is supposed to do. And she is so mean to the 10-year-old girl. She acts straight out jealous of her. I've caught her taunting her that daddy loves my sister more than her. She is horrible. I have straight up called her out after trying to talk to her like a million times. At Christmas she was saying that I'd be nice to have the kids there, and I said, why? You hate them? This was when everything was almost over and she had been bragging to her friends that her husband had spent more on her than on daughter. A fight ensued. My parents reprimanded me, but my cousins took my side and called her out, noting every moment that they had witnessed her being horrible. Her husband obviously took her side and said that she was a wonderful stepmother and that the kids love her. To which I said that was a lie, as I had consoled them countless times after they were taunted by my sister. They left and we haven't talked since. One day I was running errands and run into my step-nephews who were with their mother. I had never met her. And honestly, she is wonderful. We decided to have some coffee. While the kids were playing, she asked me how her children behaved, etc. I said they were wonderful, and then I just spilled the beans on my sister. How awful she was. What I've heard her say to the kids, the inaction of her ex-husband. By the end she was horrified. She said the kids didn't like her. But she always chucked it up to my sister being the new woman in their father's life. She said the kids never really said anything even when she asked. I then told her I was very concerned for the children, as my sister had straight up told the 10-year-old that it would be better if she disappeared from her father's life. Their mother saw red and asked me if I'd be willing to testify. She said that this was unacceptable and she would be taking their father to court again. I said I would recount the events that I witnessed and could ask my cousins who witnessed a lot too. She was very grateful. I asked my cousins who were all willing to recount the events. Word got around to my parents and by extension my sister, and they have been calling me the biggest asshole on the planet who would betray family on a whim.